Gracious Rabbi Talis and President Joel, Dr. Taylor, Mr. Dobrik, the BAM and teachers, and parents and grandparents. Well, here we are. This is it, high school graduation. Our families are gathered from far and wide, their faces beaming with pride and joy. The faculty is here to bid us goodbye, their faces beaming with relief. It's quite the celebration. And that's interesting, because while we live in a society that values few things more than creativity and innovation, graduation ceremonies are the antithesis of originality. We are standing here wearing more or less the same clothes as did the class of 2013 when they stood in this exact auditorium and participated in what is basically this exact ceremony almost exactly 1 year ago. The class of 2015, in all likelihood, is going to don some version of the clothes we're wearing and stand in this exact auditorium and participate in what is basically this exact ceremony almost exactly 1 year from now. For the past few weeks, department stores have marked the graduations of millions of the country's students from their respective institutions with little plates and party hats that say, "Congrats, grad," just as they have for decades and just as they will continue to do. Graduations are the oldest trick in the book. And yet, we continue to celebrate them. And there's nothing wrong with that, because in the words of New Yorker cartoon editor Robert Mankoff, originality is overrated. It occurred to me while I was thinking of what I might say in this forum that the high school experience and graduation have a rather obvious analog in the Torah, that is, the Jews' long journey through the wilderness from Egypt to the Promised Land. How so? Well, let's develop a working narrative to describe the high school experience. We have been going to classes for 4 years in this place called high school, an environment which is by nature scary and dangerous, but with the help of our teachers, family, and friends, is not only more than tolerable but fulfilling, and in some cases enjoyable, as long as we put in what is expected of us. After 4 years, we hear some long speeches and then we graduate, beginning our plunge into adulthood. Rather similarly, the ancient Israelites wandered through the wilderness for 40 years. The wilderness was, much like high school, a dangerous, scary place. But as long as the Jews did what was expected of them, God provided for their every physical and spiritual need. At the end of the 40 years, they too heard a series of long speeches and crossed the Jordan River, a nation beginning its plunge into adulthood. So, now that we've established this analogy, let's refocus on graduation specifically. The ancient Israelites' graduation in our analogy is the crossing of the Jordan River. In short, the nation needed to get from A to B, but there was a body of water in the way, so God miraculously split the water, leaving a path of dry land. Sound familiar? Almost exactly 40 years earlier, God had done more or less the same thing when these Israelites' parents approached the Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, on their way out of Egypt. So the splitting of the Jordan, as incredible and miraculous as it was anything but original. I think the reason why the method of entry into the Promised Land had to be so unoriginal was because everything else was changing so fast that something had to remain constant. The Jews were functioning under a new leader for the first time in most of their lives. They were transferring from an existence of pillars of fire and bread falling from the sky to one of intense agriculture and warfare. They could have been made to believe that everything was different, that this was an entirely new beginning for the nation. But as momentous as an occasion as the crossing of the Jordan was, this would have been a false impression. The Jews' fundamental responsibilities to serve God and to do His will remained unaltered, even if their practical manifestations were changing. To emphasize this constancy and continuity, God reminded them of their parents' exodus from Egypt,